Coming up on Network Africa today, M23 rebels issue 72-hour ultimatum for displaced individuals to leave settlement camps and return to their villages. Farmers in South Africa react to U.S. President Donald Trump's perception of exportation bill. Plus, Ghana missing $156 million in state budget after U.S. aid freeze. And welcome to the program. I'm Anne Umawadu, right here in Lagos, Nigeria. And let's start in South Africa, which is once again caught in the ripple effect of global political tensions. Well, this time it's involving U.S. President Donald Trump, an ANC-led government, and various lobby groups. The Foundation for Rights of Expression and Equality, Free SA, is now calling on the government of national unity to shift away from what it describes as a failing economic ideology. The organization is asking policymakers to adopt strategies that drive sustainable growth and create real opportunities for all South Africans, including repealing the Expropriation Act. Well, for more on this, we're being joined by the Director of Free South Africa, Chloe Castle. Thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa, Chloe.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate
All right,
your
thank
time.
you. I mean, Chloe, let's get right into it. You've called for, they've called for the repeal of Expropriation Act. That's been made already, arguing that it threatens prosperity, it threatens property rights, it discourages investments. I mean, a lot has been mentioned about the effect of what this will happen. But how do you respond to those who say that land reform is necessary to address historical injustices?
Thank you for that. So firstly, I think in terms of the position that Free SA has got is that the meaningful land reform to correct sort of past injustices is necessary, but we do believe that expropriation without compensation is not just. And the reason for that is that it undermines the property rights, it discourages investment, and it ultimately can harm the people that it aims to help. And a thriving company, an economy, and business environment needs to secure the land tenure and investor confidence. And, I think that's something in South Africa that we've struggled with, is a fluctuating investor confidence level. We've seen it increase, we've seen it decrease. And I think stability is something that Free SA advocates for. We need economic growth and we need job creation.
All right, Chloe, with the U.S. tariffs on South African steel and aluminium adding pressure to the economy at the moment, how much of South Africa's economic struggles can actually be attributed to external factors when you compare it to domestic policies?
So in terms of the external factors, we felt this a lot in terms of the global trade disputes. There's been a lot of pressure points that get created in terms of a move or a shift in an economic space across the globe, and South Africa doesn't necessarily always have the stability or the backbone to carry that. And I think something that contributes in a large way is our domestic policies, which are playing a far greater role to shape our economic trajectory. We need to consider the persistent issues that we constantly are facing in terms of the uncertainty. We've got excessive corruption, the failing state-owned enterprises. These are all factors that contribute, as well as unreliable energy supply. This forces individuals to seek their own form of private support, and governance support needed is certainly necessary.
But what specific policy changes do you believe would actually unlock sustainable development or maybe sustainable growth when you talk about job creation in South Africa as we speak?
So one of the large factors that Free SA is advocating for is to have a more competitive business environment. And from this, we see that reducing taxes, obviously taxes is always a difficult one, but from a private individual's perspective as well as corporates, tax is quite heavy. And we feel that if this had to be alleviated, it would unburden some of the economic activity and encourage the investment. And then second to that, obviously from a support and infrastructure component, if businesses are able to focus and drive more of their ability and capability on their core function, instead of, putting money and funds into alternative power supplies, things like that, we believe that this would stimulate more economic activity and not only stimulate the activity, but it would also encourage a bit more of the foreign investment, just, that reliability and confidence to restore in South Africa's economic space.
Now, let's talk about an alternative model, actually. Which one would you propose that balances economic growth and addresses inequality?
Thank you. I think this is a very important topic and something that's very close to Free SA's heart. We actually have a large amount of effort ourselves into supporting the youth. And I think that is something critical in part of our South African government where, we sit at a 40% plus unemployment youth rate. And in terms of alternative options to stimulate the economic side, we need to see a job creation shift completely and transition the current structure, because where we currently sit, with our economic situation, unfortunately with Trump's decision and the affecting the aluminium prices, it's a sort of knee-jerk reaction that South Africa has, and South Africa needs to be more independent of these sort of changes that could arise. And in terms of creating that employment, it's not just creating the employment, but it's also keeping the stability and sustainability around it. And obviously, 40% of your youth is a very large percentage. We need to be a lot closer to the ground in that regard, and just create opportunity for, social entrepreneurism as well.
Thank you very much. That was Chloe Castle, Director of Free South Africa. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution on Network Africa.
Thank you so much.
To other stories now, M23 rebels controlling cities in eastern Congo have already given a 72-hour ultimatum to displaced people to leave settlement camps and return to their villages. Well, according to the United Nations, the rebel group forcibly closed the temporary shelters, displacing more than 110,000 people in recent days. In a major escalation of years of fighting with government forces, M23 rebels captured Goma, and that's the region's largest city, in late January this year. The rebels' advance into Goma has killed at least 2,000 people in and around the city, and M23 is the most prominent of more than 100 armed groups vying for control in Congo's eastern region. Countries around the world are still reeling from the U.S. administration's crackdown on its largest development and humanitarian aid agency, USAID. Well, Ghana in West Africa is one of those countries feeling the blow, as it is now lacking $156 million in its state budget. President John Mahama has given the Finance Minister, Cecile Forson, the job of finding ways to close the funding deficit left behind by the freeze. Up until now, American development aid has been crucial for Ghana's health and agriculture sectors. But USAID notably supported the creation of an advanced national surveillance system for HIV and sexually transmissible diseases and programs just to make the Ghanaian agricultural firms more competitive in regional and international markets. And heads of state of governments of the African Union have started arriving in Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, for the African Union Summit. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu is already there for the meeting, which will focus on preparatory justice and racial healing. The 38th ordinary session of the AU Assembly is set to start on February the 15th this year. And our correspondent Larry Lasisi is in Addis Ababa at the moment, and he will give us an update on what is going on at the moment. Hello, Larry.
Yes, we are in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and everything is getting set for the AU summit. I can tell you that right from the airport, a lot of people are arriving for this all-important summit. And I agree with you, as you said, the issue of security is key, because one of the issues that have been lined up to be addressed at the summit is peace and unity. And so the issue of the three Sahel states that took a step out of ECOWAS will be considered. The situation in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is sure to come up. And I'm sure as leaders and all those that will be gathered for this event look at how to move the continent forward, that issue will obviously come up and will be discussed.
Harry, we know that many AU leaders, political and economic blocs are already resolving a response to possible U.S. policies. We've seen many policies for U.S. President Donald Trump. Will that be up for discussion at this summit?
Well, I'm sure as the leaders gather, there is no doubt that will be part of what they will be discussing. As I'm sure you're aware, part of the major points they want to discuss here has to do with the development of the continent, the economic development of the continent. And they will also, part of what they have planned out is to discuss intra-Africa, intercontinent, intercountry relationship, all in a bid to promote trade, to promote economic development. And as they discuss this amongst themselves, I'm clear it will also affect how to respond to some of the economic, will I call it sanctions, or the positioning that is being taken, especially by the United States of America. The continent will obviously have to know how to prepare. The countries will have to discuss, and I'm sure as a body, they will also want to see how to respond to that. So while it's not clearly stated among some of the things that have been listed, some of the themes that have been outlined will obviously mean that that issue will be considered.
Larry, we know that President Tinubu is also attending that summit. I mean, how have you heard anything about what would likely be the address by him at that summit, or what the address could pertain when you talk about that gathering?
There has been no whispers in that line, but yes, at least we have an inkling of what some of his addresses, or what the address will be at this summit. Last week, when the president left the country, his special advisor, Sunday Dari, had given us a hint that the president asked the chairman of ECOWAS, which is a very key economic bloc on the continent, will be like addressing the summit and giving them a rundown of development, especially that issue we mentioned before, the withdrawal or resignation of the three Sahel states. That's one issue I'm told. He will be briefing the summit and giving them developments, some of the things that have been going on, some of the steps that have been taken. And obviously it will be as a sort of something for the other leaders to look at. Continent and even the world continues to adjust and adapt to changing times and agitations within countries and regions. But we're sure President will also go forward to see some of the developments he has taken and he's doing in his country, how he's responding to issues of economic economic change, his reforms, how he's also handling climate change issues. And I'm sure he will use that opportunity to also talk about his own campaign, about how Africa needs to open up to work with themselves, even as they try to work together as countries in the South with and together with the world economy. So these are some of the things that we have a feeling the president will be discussing, touching when he addresses the summit. But obviously, we'll wait till we see the letters here, what he will say.
All right. Thank you very much. Our correspondent Larry Lasisi at Addis Ababa for the African Union Summit. We'll definitely be keeping you up to date on goings there. But still to come on Network Africa, Nigerians on Christian pilgrimage in Israel. They visit several sites in the Holy Land. We'll bring you the details of this and more. Please join us again.
This week on Gist Nigeria, with Nigeria's skyrocketing cost of living, are our couples navigating Valentine's this year? Hear from relationship and financial experts on love in a tough economy. Also, meet Gloria Dozian, the branding expert helping women advance their careers. For these stories and more, watch Gist Nigeria from the BBC and Channels Television.
Welcome back. It's still Network Africa on Channels Television. Nigeria's drive to scale its energy transition plans on its renewable journey receives a huge boost, courtesy of an initiative by Get Invest. Its opportunity to access the EU and Germany financial support is against the backdrop of this power deficit in the country, which is set to be significantly responsible for huge economic losses. The coordinator in Nigeria, Lawrence Adeke, says that this initiative will provide market intelligence. It will provide industry mobilization and capacity development support to local stakeholders, equipping them with the tools needed to expand clean energy solutions across the country.
The quest for just energy transition and renewable energy switch is increasingly becoming a leading conversation among stakeholders. Nigeria, with an over 220 million population, is in this wise considered a veritable destination for opportunities.
As it continues to see.
This business forum by Get Invest, a European program that mobilizes investment in renewable energy in developing countries, is announcing a niche program tailored specifically for Nigeria's renewable energy ambitions. It's called the Get Invest Nigeria.
The starting point for Get Invest was and is that it's too difficult for companies to succeed in raising capital for whichever reasons. And in turn, and I understand there's a number of financiers here in the room, you struggle with companies coming to you, projects coming to you, not ready for financing. And that is exactly what we created Get Invest for.
With over 150 key stakeholders which cut across development partners, donor agencies, financial institutions, government reps, and more, Get Invest is here to help catalyze the private sector, mobilize private capital for Nigerian businesses to develop their business case to attract funds for renewable projects.
If you're a financier, especially our domestic financiers who are looking to understand these business models and see how they can begin to play in this space, please speak to us. If you have ideas, how best we could do this, how best we could deploy the services so that our donors are happy with the work we're doing, also speak to us.
Nigeria's Rural Electrification Agency understands this and has been working as partners.
The Rural Electrification Agency started working on developing the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. And what we are doing is just to create one conversation around renewable energy, one plan for renewable energy across the country, one budget around renewable energy around, in Nigeria, and one conversation.
The House Committee Chairman on Renewables brings a message from the National Assembly.
In the next few months, the House of Representatives, through the Committee on Renewable Energy, will be organizing the first legislative summit on renewable energy to explore opportunities for engagement in this important sector of the economy. And we expect all stakeholders and experts to participate in this summit.
The importance comes of this Get Invest project. It's linking the projects, the local companies, the foreign investors, with the financing and bringing projects to life.
The offer is now open to entities and governments who want to have a skin in the game of clean energy for energy access, socio-economic development, or for just energy transition. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
Christian pilgrims from Lagos, Nigeria are enjoying even more from their exercise as participants visit various historic sites in the Holy Land. The State Special Advisor on Christian Matters, Mr. Bukola Adeleke, who led the pilgrims to historical sites, talked about in the Bible, such as Bethlehem, the Shepherd's Field, and the Church of Nativity, believes the participants will return home fulfilled. Another time out for the pilgrims. This time, the exercise begins in Bethlehem to visit Ein Kerem, a charming hillside village famed for its century-old holy sites. The first port of call is Mary Spring, also known as the Spring of the Virgin. According to Christian tradition, this is a natural spring where Mary, the mother of Jesus, drank when she visited her cousin Elizabeth. The structure of Mary Spring also has a mosque tower at the top of the building, existing since the second half of the 19th century.
Khalifa Omar was passing through here. Time for prayer took place, and then he decided to pray like next to the spring. And so they built a mosque on top of the spring. You can see the minaret up there now.
Pilgrims engage in prayer sessions to receive the miracle attached to the spring. They proceed to the Church of Visitation, a Catholic church on a hill representing the two homes of Zechariah and Elizabeth, where Elizabeth spent 5 months in seclusion, and those on pilgrimage step their feet in all the temples within Visitation Church.
This is one of the chapels, and there is a place of prayer at this point where Mary was with Elizabeth, our cousin sister, and the significance of this place. This chapel was designed a long time ago, and it's a place of prayer. People are praying there, and God is doing wonders in this place. One of the advantage or significance of this place is a spiritual site. It's one of the sites that people love to visit, and being here today is a privilege. And also, we also use the opportunity to pray for ourselves, to also pray for Nigeria, to also pray for Lagos State.
Next is the visit to the oldest church in the Holy Land, called the Church of Nativity, birthplace of Jesus in Bethlehem, a beautiful view to behold and speak to the Lord.
The purpose of our coming here is not just visiting, it's not a tourism aspect, but it's a divine aspect, spiritual aspect, where people need to come and see and change their lives spiritually, so that they can be out of the normal mortal body and get the spirit in their life, so that they can be able to be captured in normal Christianity community.
The pilgrimage tour of the day was rounded off at the Shepherdsville Chapel, also known as Nativity Grotto, a cave which commemorates the Annunciation of Jesus' birth to the shepherds, said to have taken place in Beit Sahor.
Well, it's always a lovely experience. Well, you could call this one another experience of a lifetime. And finally on the program, our correspondent Ilaya Beriwo, who is also on this holy pilgrimage exercise, tells us what's been happening so far.
I'm currently in Nazareth at the Church of Annunciation. It's really cold out here and it's about to rain. But I must tell you that the journey to the Holy Land has been fun, filled with spiritual experience. From day one of the tour, pilgrims had the opportunity to visit various historical sites in the Bible. The spiritual tourism started from Amman, Jordan. The first place visited was Maracus, the hilltop stronghold of Herod the Great. But not everyone had the opportunity to get to the mountaintop, just like the elderly. Navigating the mountain was really difficult, but for those who had the strength to get to the top, took good use of the opportunity to pray to God and also ensure that they get their blessings before leaving the Holy Land. We also stopped over at Mount Renewable, where Moses looked over the promised land before his death. Another historic site visited was the Dead Sea, also called the Salt Sea. The sea is unique in itself because it's rich in minerals, and the mud in the sea can be used to moisturize the skin. But unfortunately, nothing lives in the Dead Sea. We also visited Jericho, the Mount of Temptation in the state of Palestine. Mount of Temptation is another historic structure where Jesus spent 40 days, 40 nights praying and fasting. And I'm sure that everyone knows that Jesus was tempted at that place by the devil. But the good thing is that pilgrims took good advantage of all the historic sites visited, ensuring that they make their prayers, going back to the country with their blessings. As I said, I'm in Nazareth, and very soon we'll be heading to Canaan in Galilee.
All right, Titi, I guess that's a good experience. Well, this is where we will draw the curtains on this edition of Network Africa. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu.